A dispute between neighbors turned lethal early Tuesday morning when 51-year-old Clayton Carter, an anti-Trump fanatic, shot G. Brooks Jennings of West Goshen, Pennsylvania, execution style. When police arrived on the scene, they noticed the homemade signs Carter had placed on his front lawn, and a clearer picture of the crazed gunman began to form. According to ABC6, shortly before 8 p.m. on Monday night, police responded to the 300 block of Box Elder Drive for an argument between Carter and Jennings about cursing and video recording in the backyard. Authorities were able to resolve the dispute, but just a few hours later, the two neighbors were at each other's throats once again. At approximately 1 a.m. Tuesday, police say the men began fighting for the second time. Carter told police that Jennings shined a light into his eyes while he was outside, prompting Carter to pull a car onto his lawn, shining the high beams of the car onto Jennings' property. Carter then allegedly retrieved a .380 semi-automatic handgun from his house and confronted the victim again outside. Officials say Carter shot Jennings once in the head, knocking him to the ground. The victim was on his own property. Carter then allegedly stood over Jennings' body and shot him once more in the head. A horrified Mrs. Jennings heard the first gunshot and came running, only to see Carter standing over her husband before firing the second shot straight into his head. Carter has admitted to shooting Jennings after an ongoing dispute between the two men but claims he did so in self-defense. Carter maintains that Jennings was threatening him with a knife. "My client says he was justified in shooting the victim, because he was under attack by a knife-wielding assailant," said defense attorney Terrence Marlowe. This defense will obviously prove problematic, as there was a witness to the shooting, Mrs. Jennings, who saw Carter standing over her husband when he fired the second shot. Mr. Jennings was obviously no longer a threat to Carter once he was on the ground after having been shot once already. However, a knife was recovered at the scene. Neighbor Brian Doughty became emotional when speaking of Jennings. "You don't want to sound cliché, you see this on TV all the time, but he is probably the nicest, best guy I've ever met in my whole life." "Really, seriously?" Doughty said. On the other hand, Carter has been described as a quarrelsome, argumentative man who his neighbors avoided at all costs. Apparently, they were right in doing so, as he clearly has a violent streak when his anger gets the best of him. Perhaps Carter's neighbors were tipped off to his mental instability when they saw the homemade signs he had placed in his front yard. Court records show that Carter had a history of disputes with his neighbors, though they were not political. "We steered clear of him. We were frightened of him because he's so unpredictable," said Kathy Pratt. On hearing of a shooting Tuesday morning, former neighbor Mary Beth Wallace came to the scene fearing the suspect had been involved in harming someone. "My heart sunk to my feet because I knew something had happened," Wallace said. "I had seen that there was a shooting on Box Elder, and my heart just sunk to my feet. I knew all the way over here, I just suspected what I was going to find," she added. Carter has been charged with murder and related offenses and is currently being held at the Chester County Prison. It certainly appears that he will have a long time to stew in his own bitterness behind bars because the shooting of Jennings was clearly unjustified. Beware your anti-Trump neighbors, folks. They're not right in the head. Please share the story and tell us what you think by clicking one of the buttons below. We want to hear your voice.